Welcome back to Shop Talk, everybody. I'm the Truck and Cyber Guy, and my guest today is Steve Hankel, VP of Information Technology at Johansen Transportation Services. Steve, welcome to Shop Talk. Hey, everybody, real quick before we get into today's episode. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to hit the subscribe and the like button. And if you want to be notified when new episodes are available, ring the bell. Helps us spread our message to a broader audience, and I genuinely appreciate your support of the channel. So let's roll into today's episode. Now, Steve, I know you've worn a lot of different hats, but let's just start with where you are right now at Johansen Transportation Services. What is your role there? What do you do in your day-to-day?
So I am in charge of all the technology at Johansen Transportation Service. So we've got a cloud infrastructure. All of our servers and a lot of the networking is in the cloud. We have multiple sites across the country. Our headquarters is based in Fresno. So we have a large user base at our corporate headquarters there, and then we have users kind of scattered at various sites around the country. A lot of people work from home, and a lot of them are hybrid. So some people 2 or 3 days in the office, a couple days at home. Also in charge of a small software engineering team. So we're a little unique in that most of the programs that our employees use are homegrown applications. So we have our own TMS, both an internal program that the employees use, and then a web-based one that's used by our carriers and customers. Also, we have an EDI team. So we do obviously in our business lots of EDI, EDI coming in, EDI going out, coming in and out from multiple sources, going out to customers, coming in from carriers. Large volume of APIs to get information too. So then last but not least is our risk and cybersecurity program. So we're very heavy into disaster recovery. Twice a year, we do a huge cloud drill where we basically shut down our West Coast Azure presence and we spool up on the East Coast, and we run our whole company on the East Coast for 2 weeks. And then we spool that down, spool up the West Coast, and wash, rinse, and repeat. So that way we absolutely know that if any disaster hits us at any time, in about 4 hours, we can be up and running across the country.
That was what I was going to ask you is what's the turnaround time on that? Because that's always kind of a like deep breath, push the button moment.
Well, it took years to get there, I will say. There's no way that first time you're flipping a switch and everybody's going out to get coffee and coming back and working on the East Coast. It was many, many times, and I'll say the early days, we always thought, oh, we'll just do this on a Wednesday night or something. And, we'd start at 7 o'clock and 3 a.m, we'd be like, all right, roll it back. It looks like we're not going over there tonight. And, it took a long time. But now it's pretty much anytime there's any change made, our DR playbook gets updated. We do tabletop readings of that several times a year just to make sure, we just upgraded 3 servers. Is that information in here? Oh, we changed the name of this server and this platform. And oh, we have this customer that requires this and this and this. Is that included? That kind of thing. So yeah, that took a long time. Now it's, our last one was, 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we were flipped over. It was very smooth.
No, you've been there for most of this entire transition. I mean, you've basically led this transition from what I understand. You've been there, what, 15 plus years now?
Yep. I'll hit 16 years this year. Yeah, and we have come a long way. When I was first here, we had a few servers in a closet down in our corporate office, and we had distributed programs that we were rolling out manually, and we didn't really have any kind of a web-based TMS. In fact, that's what I was hired for, was to take their Microsoft Access-based TMS and make a full-scale web application that customers could jump on anytime carriers could put in their updates. When I started, we were using a lot of faxing. It's amazing, just 15 years ago, how much faxing was such a major
I'm
thing.
very familiar with that stage in in transportation, man. A lot of paper.
Yeah, we would have people write down, print something out, write stuff down, fax it to a carrier. A carrier would write down where they were at the moment and fax it back. When we proposed creating this automated system that would automatically email all the dispatchers for all the loads we were doing, and they could just click a button and type in where they were. A lot of people were like, "Well, a lot of employees were like, well, wait a minute, half my day is just faxing and sending and receiving faxes. What am I going to do now?" And within a couple of weeks, of course, they figured out, they were doing more efficient things, and, they had more time in their day to proactively monitor things, to maybe sell more loads and, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember because I went through a similar process with a carrier that I worked for where it was all paper. It was all, faxing back and forth. All the bills came in. They did a lot of point of origin shipping from their warehouse, and it was all on paper,
Yeah,
the whole thing.
yeah,
And it was the same thing. When you're trying to make that transition and streamline and make things more efficient, everybody's got that fear of like, well, wait a minute, this is how I've always done my job. I don't know
yeah,
anything different, and it takes jumping in or getting thrown in and realizing that there's more to do. There's lots of different hats you can wear. The job's just going to be different. It's
yeah,
not going to go away. So
yeah. And our tracing has changed. Well, I think we've had 3 or 4 major process changes in the way we do tracing. It used to be, hey, as long as I get my updates once a day, that's great. Now it's like, hey, it's been 6 minutes since I've got an update. What's going on? What are you guys doing over there? That
the
kind of stuff.
the expectations, man.
Yeah, yeah, we're plugged into ELDs and satellite systems and pooled resources and all automated stuff. And we still have people that are just calling up saying, "Hey, you didn't turn the app on, you didn't do this, where are you?" That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Our major tracing provider, they're using some AI and some chatbots. And so if if a dispatcher doesn't or a carrier or dispatcher doesn't install the software or doesn't report in, it will text them and say, "Hey, this is Amy. Do you mind telling me where you are? We weren't getting any readouts of your current location." And then they'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm right here," or "Let me install the app." And they'll say, "Oh, here's the link," and then they'll click it. And so it's all of these different methods that have we have fantastic response now on tracing, well into the 90 percentile. So it's come a
Oh, that's
long
impressive.
way from the once a day, send a fax, get a fax, type it in. Everybody's doing everything manually.
What was the transition like when you started using AI and chatbots and stuff for interactions with drivers? Did you have any pushback, or was that all through third party and it just sort of happened? And because I'm always curious how that rollout goes.
Yeah, it was easier. Obviously, it's much easier to have a canned solution, or better yet, you have a solution for something else and they add it in for you. But we used it fairly smoothly to send emails and do some chatting. In fact, it was pretty seamless, and the responses were so realistic that there were a lot of people that thought that they were just talking to a normal person. And in fact, they would call in to give an update, and they say, "Hey, is Amy there? I want to give her my
Oh
updates."
man, real live Turing test.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That's an area where I've heard a lot of the same kinds of comments as we saw, like you were just saying, with taking away faxes and automating and streamlining processes. People are sort of seeing the same writing on the wall with, well, an AI agent's going to be able to do all this stuff that I do right now. And it's almost the same conversation, different technology, where we're just reimagining what can that person then do to add value to the organization elsewhere. And I try to stay in that optimistic boat where I don't think it's going to take jobs away in the way that a lot of people are afraid of. I think that certainly some will go away. That's inevitable, but
I think now it'll really enhance the existing jobs that are out there. I know that, with my software engineers, a lot of and it's embraced right now. We're mostly using it with our senior software engineers because, you have to know what to believe. It's kind of like, as a young software engineer and you're Googling how to do certain things, you're getting just all of this massive information back. And it's the same thing with AI. It'll say, oh, do this, this, and this. And then you're like, wait, are you really wanting me to do this? That doesn't make any sense. And then
Right.
it'll
Right.
reply, oh yeah, you're right. I was wrong. Yeah, try this.
You almost spend more time correcting it than you do
Yeah.
benefiting from it if you don't already know how to weed through those things
Yeah,
immediately.
if you don't know what you're doing and you're just looking to, okay, I know how to do this, but I don't remember how to do it specifically, you can ask AI, it spits it out, and you're like, oh yeah, I remember now. Okay, and then, do this and
Right.
that. But
Right.
it is getting, obviously it's getting better and better every year, every few months, it seems like it's getting better.
Yeah, it's crazy the speed we've seen. I wanted to ask you. You mentioned backing up just a little bit. You mentioned that you came on board at Johansen specifically to kind of transition them away from the Access database based operation software and build them this TMS. That was kind of where you were operating. That's the space you were operating in for quite some time. Was in software development and applications development in the .com era. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I originally, and yeah, I was doing a lot of programming and stuff. Early on in my career, I was uh, I was actually more on the infrastructure side. So, building out servers, building out web servers, and back in the NT351, NT4 days, building up networks, managing phone systems, user support, that kind of stuff. And I actually really lucked out, right place at the right time. I got a job as a system admin for a .com called homegrocer.com, and they were one of the first home delivery companies, and we were growing so fast. I was employee, gosh, I think it was like employee 149, and within a couple of years, it was like we were already like an employee 4,500,
Wow.
and I went from a sysadmin to an IT manager to a district IT manager to a regional IT manager to IT director in 2 years. So it was things were just
Wow.
flying and that growing so fast. And so yeah, I got my hands on a lot of different things. I was also and then after that I was doing with the .com crash, everything came tumbling down, and I got into consulting. I got in with this guy that he he supported the software called Macola, and it was kind of like warehousing, WMS, inventory management, shipping, accounting type thing. So I kind of had a couple of years of shipping type experience, and then from there I was looking for something new, and I called up an old boss that I had worked with at Home Grocer, who was now at Washington Mutual, or WAMU as they went by later on. It was funny because I called him up and said, "Hey, you mind if I use you as a reference?" And he's like, "Wait, you're looking for work?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "When can you start?" I go, "Well, I can start, fairly soon." He goes, "Can you start on Monday?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What's
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 the
going on?
job?
Yeah, what's the job?" And he's like, oh yeah. Let's backtrack a little bit. And he's like, it's up in Seattle. It's at WAMU, and we are absolutely going gangbusters right now. And they were just about like printing money, trying to hire people as fast as they possibly could. So anyway, I went up there, interviewed, said, "Oh wow, this sounds great." And the really nice thing about it was, it was a huge bank, huge bank, but their enterprise risk was operated kind of like a .com, where a lot
Hmm.
of us said, there ended up being five people that I had worked with before at Home Grocer, and then all these other people that had been at different .coms, and a lot mixed in with some Boeing people because Boeing's really big up there. And so it had the feel of a startup, and it was really young and exciting. Everybody was brand new. After I got hired, I asked my boss, like, okay, so what exactly am I going to be doing here? And they're like, oh, you're going to be working on the Risk View project. And I was like, Risk View, what is that? Is it, do I need to install it? What? He goes, oh, no, that's the software you're going to write. And I was like, well, I'm not exactly a software engineer. And he goes, Steve, come on, I saw you read a book over the weekend and implement something the next week. He goes, I'm sure this will be a piece of cake for you. I'm thinking, geez, how am I gonna? So the good thing is I was able to kind of pick whatever technology, and formatting and all that kind of stuff. So that was another really fast thing where I was the software engineer there for a couple of years. The next thing I know, I'm leading the tools team, they called it, and hiring people and using contractors over in India and everything to build this. It ended up being this enterprise risk suite with cybersecurity and disaster recovery and event management and all of that stuff. And so it all became baked into my brain because I had to
Hmm.
understand how
Hmm.
all that stuff worked, and they wanted us to get. That's why I had to get a cybersecurity certified at GSEC through SANS and became a certified business continuity planner. All of these things I never thought a couple of years earlier I'd even be involved in. So that's where I really got kind of thrown into the deep end with cybersecurity. And we would have forensics people coming from Microsoft to advise on certain things. And that wasn't directly related to me, but a lot of times I would jump in like, oh my gosh, what is this? Tell me all about this. You're actually analyzing different bits on a system that someone already formatted, a year ago. How does that work? And by getting these certifications and I'd start up my own lab and set Trojans, loose in this lab and then figure out how to fight them and, kind of all of that kind of stuff, and then building this program to house all of this. Yeah, I really had a blast doing that.
That is, I think that's the best kind of training. It's like, just building stuff to break it and figure out how to unbreak it or prevent it from, prevent the bad things from happening. And then, just iterating over that and getting better and better at that. So
Yeah,
many people I know, that's the origin story. That's you get thrown into something and you got to figure it out on the fly. And so you just either build it and kind of learn as you go, or you build it at
yeah,
home and then you try to implement what you're learning. And you know I think from the outside a lot of people have this perception that in cybersecurity there's always like the right way to do everything, and there's this prescribed process, and I feel like we're kind of writing the book as we
yeah,
go a
yeah,
lot of the time, because as soon as even if you do have the knowledge and the skills, it changes so fast that you've got to constantly be learning some new variant, new skill set.
yeah, definitely.
I think that's one of the reasons it's an interesting field and keeps people engaged, though.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
it's
and you got to be on your toes because the moment you feel like you're one step ahead, you're two steps behind.
yeah, yeah. It's what's the saying? If it's too quiet, you better start looking around a little more carefully. As you know,
Yeah,
it's never a good thing.
yep.
So, disaster recovery, cybersecurity, is that you went right from that bank into Johansen, or was kind of an evolution beyond there? Did you stayed in disaster recovery for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, so yeah, interesting story. I don't like to brag too much about this. Um, I
Well,
ended
this ought
up
to be good.
so at being at Home Grocer, which eventually was bought out by Webvan. That was the biggest .com failure in history. Well, as a lot of people know, WAMU ended up becoming the biggest banking failure in history, due to the crashing of the mortgage market and all that stuff, and all the McLoans that were being approved for anybody that could show a W-2 with a couple numbers on it. Um, and so after that, basically, oh, so yeah, so WAMU, we wake up one day and the Fed decides to dissolve WAMU and give their assets to JP Morgan Chase for literally a couple pennies on the dollar. And they had actually offered to buy WAMU 6 to 9 months earlier at 8.59 a share or something like that. And we kind of laughed it off because I think we were probably selling it around the $14 mark, 12 $14 that time. And then later in the year, there's a run on the market. People are pulling their money out. Basically, the Fed determined that WAMU didn't have a high enough percentage of assets to match the money that they were keeping in the bank. And so, which they call a run on the bank, where it's, people are running to the bank to pull their money out, and then your percentages get worse and worse and worse and worse. Yep. Anyway, there's a movie about that, and you can watch and find out about all that. But so uh, there was a friend of mine that was starting a company, and he was going to start a cybersecurity and kind of enterprise risk company. And he wanted me to handle the disaster recovery piece, and business continuity piece, and some of the event management. And I said no because I didn't know kind of his whole work ethic and all that kind of stuff. And starting a company, I had actually started a few companies over the years that I had done on the side. And sometimes sometimes you have people that work just as hard as you do, and sometimes you have people that like the idea of being in a business, and you end up carrying all the weight.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided, I'm like, I don't think I really want to do that. And then the guy that I worked with at WAMU and worked for many years, developing the enterprise risk tools and everything, I was talking to him about it. I'm like, he wanted me to work, go into business with him and everything. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. And he's like, well, why don't we go into business? He's like, we pretty much built this thing from the ground up and are now pretty much experts in business continuity, disaster recovery, and enterprise risk and all that stuff. We could start our own tool, build it out, and go and start our own, SaaS program, and kind of go from there. We know what to do. We can bring in other people to help us with sales and that kind of thing. Also, one of the reasons that kind of spawned this was because of the program we had at WAMU. When JP Morgan came over, they basically, we were considered key employees because of this tool. We're tied to this risk program. Whoa, I don't want to touch that risk program. And so they were looking for a new risk program. And so they added us to the mix of the top 5 that they had found and everything. And so we actually were kind of pitching our program, just a couple of guys that worked in IT there with along with these other professional companies that were all kind of pitching it. And actually we went pretty far, but it came down to maybe we were in the top 3 or 4 or something like that. And then they were like, we really want to use this. And I mean, because we had a homegrown application that
Right.
and JP Morgan was a 250,000 employee company. So they probably wanted something a little more reliable than Steve and Greg, working out of their garage, on this program. So anyway, yeah, no, that's true. So they wanted us to stay for a while, but then they wanted us to go. So we actually got a very good severance package where we basically every month we stayed, we got another month of severance, and then in the end they gave us a bonus, and then they gave us the severance, and so we had a lot of money. We had probably 14 to 16 months of salary. So that really kind of solidified the idea of starting our own company. Hey, we got this money, we can live on it, we'll also build up a business, and so that's what we did. Obviously there's a lot when you just want to code all day, and you gotta work with legal. You gotta figure out how the sales are going to work and marketing. You got to figure out the operations, onboarding customers and training them, and then also the day-to-day support. And it was the absolute worst time that anybody in history could start a company. So, it was 2000. What was that? 2008. After all of these banks were crashing, we were something people had to pay for, and we actually started selling to banks, and we would bring them on and pitch them on it. They would kind of be excited. The sales cycle for enterprise software is, as you can imagine, is pretty slow and pretty long. So we would, it was crazy. Nothing really clicked. It was just amazing the extreme bad luck we kept running into. We ran our company for a couple years, um, never did get a paying customer, but had a fantastic experience, writing all the software from scratch again and getting lots of contacts and kind of really understanding more, even at a deeper level, enterprise risk and cybersecurity and DR and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then it just so happened, we both started looking for jobs, and we both ended up finding jobs within a couple of weeks of, starting to look. And mine was at Johansen Transportation Service, and I remember coming into the interview, and they kind of showed me what their current Microsoft Access, TMS looked like, and they're like, "Could you put this on the web?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can easily put that on the web. What else do you need?" "Well, this is what we need, and we'll go from there, and we'll try to figure out where we can go from there." And pretty much from day one, it was like build this, build that, build this, build that, automate this and automate that, and I think I was maybe here 5 years, and then the executive team and my previous boss came to me and said, "Hey, we have big plans for you. We want to kind of slowly transition you into the VP role, because my boss was going to be retiring in a few years." So they brought me in to shadow him, and then they also were like, "What ideas do you have?" So yeah, it was kind of like, "Oh, well, let's do this. Check, let's do this." And that's kind of what over the last 10 years I've been doing here is kind of setting up a lot of these different, our cybersecurity program and disaster recovery and a lot of the risk type things that it's when you have kind of your main area of all the when the VP of IT, and then you're also trying to do all the cyber stuff, and we don't have policies. Let's use let's use CIS controls to help us develop a framework in a period of time where we need to go from this level, this level, this level, this level.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things I like about cyber insurance. I mean, we can go back and forth on cyber insurance, and everybody's got some strong opinion about it usually. But I think that's one thing it's really good about is kind of prescribing that checklist in advance to tell you how to get to where you want to be. Because I think, and for a lot of the people that certainly the people that I talk to on the small to medium size business side, it's that like, where do I start? There's so much to do. How do I
Yeah,
even know what to work on?
yeah.
And a lot of places don't have that person they can tap and say, do this, do this, do this. Now, what else do we need to do? It's like,
Hmm.
so I think that's an
Yeah,
important piece of the
yeah.
puzzle for a lot of people.
I don't necessarily advocate either way for cyber insurance. I know that, but those are the positive things that I've seen is
Yeah.
kind of the built-in
Yeah.
checklists and things like that.
Couple of things that I noticed as you were talking through this. One is more of an observation than it is a question, but it's interesting to me, and I think this happens a lot in life in general, but particularly in these types of career paths, and certainly happened to me on a number of occasions where you think something's the right direction and you're pushing, 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 and you're trying to make it work, and eventually the world conspires to tell you, no, this isn't the path you're supposed to be on. And then all of a sudden this opportunity will open up. And, it's at the time, did you look at Johansen as like, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to stay here for a long time? Or did it look like something that was going to be like, I'm going to go and help them with these projects and then,
Yeah,
maybe do
that's
something else?
exactly it. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, they're at the time in my mind, seeing what they had, at least with their TMS and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could make a huge impact here and really help them a lot, by bringing everything bringing everything online and all this stuff. And then I started looking into, whoa, what's the infrastructure like? Oh boy, yeah, I could do this and I could consolidate
Hmm.
that and do all these things. And actually, that's kind of that's really what's been keeping me entertained here, and is the breadth of things, and also the support of the owner. We're a single owner, family run company, and Larry Johansen he's from day one. I was really impressed that he made such a fuss about IT and technology, and he would tell us stories about how several of his competitors over the years had gone out of business because they didn't embrace technology, and
Hmm.
they were like, no, we don't need that, that's too expensive. And so he always wanted to be ahead of things. So when I started pitching a lot of these, what a lot of people would say, that's crazy, we don't have money for that, why would you even mention that? He would say, tell me more, and
Yeah.
and so and then he would see something get implemented, and great, 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 okay. And then I would, you have a few successes, and then they get real excited, and then you can do more. And we've had some things that didn't work as well, and we just, okay, let's cut our losses and move on to
Hmm.
something else.
Hmm.
And he's given me that flexibility and ownership that I can feel comfortable pitching a lot of these ideas, even though they may sound crazy. Once they get going, we have a lot of successes.
Well, I think that's particularly in transportation. I mean, I'm biased. I've been in transportation most of my career, but I see there's two common types. There's the what you just described, which is, I would say, forward leaning, kind of interested in the technology and how it can enhance the business and kind of use it as a competitive edge, right? And then there's the, trucking and logistics have been such a kind of static industry in some ways for a long time, where it's, the focus is on the movement of goods, and there's not a lot that changes there. You're always going to be picking stuff up in one spot and putting it down in another spot, and when you boil it down, that's all it is. And I think a lot of companies have fallen into that trap of thinking, well, technology is just going to complicate things. We've got a good system working, and we know what we're doing. Everybody knows their roles. We're comfortable, and before you know it, that competitor who's engaging with the new technologies and looking for that, taking a little bit off the margins here or there, or increasing efficiency by a little bit year over year, all of a sudden they're miles ahead. And I've seen that happen over and over. So I think it's always refreshing to see someone where, the leadership is really leaning into what technology can do in this industry, because there's so many areas where it can have an impact. That's the cool thing about this industry, transportation.
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
Backing way up, it sounds like obviously you've been in the technology space for a long time. Did you know all along that's where you were going to end up, or was that
No,
something that
no,
just
no,
happened?
no. Actually, yeah, it's funny. It's amazing how something can happen out of the blue and just totally. Yeah, I think you were talking about that earlier. How something happens, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I guess I'm going this way, and being
Hmm.
able to kind of embrace the change. And that's kind of how I am somewhat. So yeah, I actually got a degree in business, and my option was marketing. And basically, almost all the companies that were coming to Oregon State at the time for marketing majors were big retailers, J.C. Penney's and Sears and Walmart and Meyer and Frank, and all these companies. And so I kind of did the circuit along with all the other marketing majors, and I ended up getting an internship at Walmart. And I got engaged at that time to my wife, who we'd been dating in college. And so I was thinking, oh, okay, good. This could lead. And they kind of advertised about, oh, if you're a store manager, whoa, you look at all this money you can make. And so I got a job at Walmart, and then we ended up getting moved to the middle of Washington State, to one of the highest turnover Walmarts in the country. And so every time you would hire an employee and train them, they'd quit 2 weeks later. And it's Apple country up there. So Wenatchee,
Hmm.
Washington is like, at one time they called it the Apple capital of the world. And so whenever the apple harvest would happen, half your work crew would just quit and instantly make two or three times what they were making at Walmart
Oh, sure.
harvesting
Yeah.
apples. And
Yeah.
then you kind of had some transient people that were kind of used to kind of following the agricultural cycles, and then they would, work at Walmart in between or something, and then they would just drop and move on somewhere else. And so, oh my goodness, it was really tough. You're working, 12-hour days, day after day, and a lot of times if they got really behind, you and the other managers would be working 6-day weeks for week and week and week after week after week. So I did that for, I don't even think I lasted a year. And so then I moved back to Portland, which is where I grew up, Portland, Oregon, and living with the in-laws, and we're newly married, and my wife found a job right away, and so I'm the deadbeat, getting up at
Oh no.
9 in the morning, drinking my coffee, looking at the ads, and did that for a bit, and then my father-in-law would start giving me errands to do. Hey, can you go pick up some parts for me? Because he was a mechanic. Hey, you're not doing anything today. You want to go do it? So that was kind of some high motivation there. Really high
Yep.
motivation was my wife's out working every day. I'm the deadbeat. He's starting to give me tasks to do. I think I better really, hit the
Yeah.
ground. And so I got a job at actually that's how I first got into the dot com era was citysearch.com was hiring. And I went down there and actually applied for just like a basic entry level operations job. I figured, wow, this really sounds cool. This is kind of where things are going, this .com stuff. And it was
Hmm.
it was early
Hmm.
on. This was 97. So this was 97.
Okay.
And it just so happened out of luck where they had me sitting was right next to the whole IT group. And
Okay.
so I started talking to them, and they were massively overwhelmed, like most IT shops are. You never have enough hands or anything. So I was just curious about everything. Like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what is this? What is that? And my job that I had was so boring and so easy that I would literally get my entire job done within a few hours in the morning. And then I would spend the rest of the day like, here, give me that laptop. I know how to install Windows. And oh, hey, what's this? Oh, show me how this phone system works. And I'd get on there and help them program interfaces for people, or move stuff around, or go get on a Cisco router and do some updates, and just get on a server, learn about SQL Server. That was kind of where I first kind of learned a lot of this stuff. And then we had one guy quit, and they were like, well, we don't really have the budget to replace him. Steve, you like this stuff. Why don't you work with him? And I'm like, hey,
Nice.
yeah, I'd love to. I'd much rather do that. So I started working with the one guy that was left there. So it was the two of us working. And there was a lot of that was where I first got into Microsoft Access, because um, there were a lot of there were some custom applications that they had created with Microsoft Access, and so that's where I learned how to. Oh, show me how to do this. Oh, this person needs this feature. Oh, yeah, and so they would show me. And back then, there wasn't a lot of stuff on the internet, so I think Access actually came with a huge book, and so
Yeah,
I
they
would I would go
haven't
through
seen one of
that.
those in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. So I would go through that and try to figure out, stuff. And so that's where I kind of learned how to, do some basic, VBA programming and stuff like that, making some macros. So someone clicks a button and this happens, and, kind of
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
introduction to programming. And the guy I was working with, he was working on his Microsoft Certified System Engineer certification. And he goes, these are really hot right now. If you get one of these, you can just about print money. He goes, you can get a job, anytime, and you could probably even double your pay. And so that kind of really got me excited, because I'm newly married. We want to start a family. We want to buy a house. And it's like, how do I make more money? That kind of thing.
Right.
So I kind of went, and, my wife was, she supported me too. She was happy. So, oh yeah, if you can make more money, that'd be great. So, I would set up flashcards, and she'd be, we'd be up late at night in bed, and she'd be kind of, reading through these, quizzing me. And then once I got my MCSE, then, yeah, from there, um, my, it just so happened that it was time for my annual raise cycle. They didn't they didn't, my idea of my value and their idea of value didn't didn't connect. So
Yeah.
I ended up calling the guy that I'd worked with before because he had quit, and so then I was the only IT person. So we went from three people to just one, and I was just working around the clock trying to keep the place running. And they didn't think that it was really that much work. They're like, oh, well, you're more of a coordinator, whatever. But I mean, it was they didn't really understand. It's hard to explain.
That's the curse. That's the
All
curse of
yeah,
the
yeah,
non-technical management.
yeah, understanding what's involved. That you're all excited because you were able to move mountains, and they're just like, whatever. So I call up this guy and I'm kind of talking to him. I'm like, oh gosh, it's just I can't. I feel like I'm just working 7 days a week, and I just can never get caught up. And the latest race cycle, it was this or that. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called. He's like, I'm working on this Y2K project with U.S. Bank, and we have to hire 20 people in the next 2 weeks. And he's like, you'll easily make double what you're making there. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's great. And so he's like, when can you start? I'm like, hey, I can start whenever. So anyway, it was kind of like just because I'd become friends with him and he knew kind of my work ethic, and I was there, working before too long, and worked on a worked on a huge Y2K project. And so that project um, led to another contract. I started, oh, I'm a contractor now. So I was kind of jumping around, went to another contract, and then I was looking for my next contract. I applied at this company that was going to be doing a Y2K project, another Y2K project, and a wireless handheld thing project for Emery Worldwide, which is a transportation company. They're not around anymore, but they used to be a global shipper, and LTL and FTL, and kind of the works. And it just so happened that the project manager for that project had just hired so she was like the senior project manager, and then she needed to hire a team of project managers to manage the deployments again for all over the country for Emery Worldwide. And two of the guys were the two project managers from US Bank that I'd worked with, and they saw my resume and they're like, we have to get this guy. I guarantee you he can just plop in a chair and immediately pick it up and start working. So sure enough, I go in for the interview and I'm like, hey, I know you. And they're kind of telling me that they just happened to look, and they hadn't been looking at resumes up until that point. She just got a whole bunch of resumes all at once, and they just happened to. So I jump in, and I worked there for, it might have been at that time I was doing like either 3 month or 6 month projects, and I did that, and then the project I was on was going to be wrapping up like in the next month, and so that's when I applied at Home Grocer, and ended up getting that job, and then that just kept, the rest is history, basically.
I feel like that. I mean, the progression and the path that you just described is the perfect example of why you don't burn bridges, particularly in this kind of
Oh yeah,
industry, because it's amazing how many times you crisscross with people. Transportation's small, cybersecurity is small, in these pockets. And then, if you're in
yeah,
cybersecurity and transportation, that's an even smaller world. And, you're going to run into the same people. And it's so funny. I love hearing other people's experience with that, because it's same way with me. I've bumped into people and I'm like, oh yeah, we met at such and such, and
yeah,
some
yeah,
opportunity can come of that.
yeah,
Um, and I always tell people, that are early in their career, I'm like, a job may suck. Do it anyway, leave on good terms, and
oh
move to the
yeah,
next one, because you never
oh
know
yeah,
when that person might be a deciding factor at another firm somewhere, or somewhere
yeah,
later in your
yeah.
career. It's so important.
yeah, make yourself invaluable. And when you leave, especially, they'll realize, oh my goodness, I don't know how many jobs that I left, and people friends that were still there, they're like, oh my gosh, they didn't even know where to start. They didn't realize you were doing that much stuff.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
also, it's a good lesson on, help them understand what you're doing, and so that that they can understand your value too.
Well, I think it
But
does two things. It helps you justify your value, and it helps everybody kind of get on the same page, and it also helps the organization move forward because they're not dependent on that one person. I mean, I've seen so many times where you've got tribal knowledge in one person's head, a key person,
yeah,
and when they do leave, then it's a mess trying to figure out like what was it they did. It's not documented anywhere.
oh yeah,
Nobody has the same skill set and doesn't know how
yeah,
to wear all 14 hats that person was wearing at the time.
yeah.
And
We're
because
doing that right now. We have one of our senior guys that's been here over 20 years, and on top of it, he's got 45 years of software engineering experience, and he's got 20 years here and knowing wrote most of the programs, or had some involvement in most of the programs, had 20 years of experience in accounting, so he does all the accounting software. It's kind of like hat after hat after hat after
hmm
hat.
hmm hmm
And so I had to sell the executives on the idea that, you know what, this is going to take a 5-year ramp up to let this person retire. And
hmm
and that's what we did. We brought in, people to learn from him, and also to help in documentation. It's a huge thing. And when you're not in technology, you don't really understand that there's so many things that one particular software engineer can do. And especially, we do a lot of full stack engineers that are, writing the SQL queries and designing the reports and coding the forms, and, connecting the APIs and all that kind of stuff. And, one person
hmm
leaves, it's very hard to hire one person, a new person that knows all of those things. We've kind of
Yeah.
hedged our bets,
And
and
knows
brought
the
in those
business. Yeah.
and knows the, yeah, that's the key thing.
It has to be embedded in the processes in the business, or at least designed hand in hand with process change in the business, or it's not going to get adopted. And I think
Yeah.
that's the trick with all of this stuff is figuring out the business and then figuring out, because you can't just bolt technology onto a business and fix bad processes. And
No. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can't
That's
increase efficiency by adding new things.
yeah.
You know,
Yes.
you
Technology is something that helps you go through your business process. If you don't have a business process, you're not going to buy something out of the box that's going to
no.
necessarily. I mean, some people do that. They buy something out of the box and they just model their business process based on how the software works.
And I've seen both sides of that, and the one side can be pretty painful when it's not aligned with
Yeah.
business
Now,
processes. But
now I will say that designing and rolling out your own software is very, very difficult and complex. So there's that too.
well, it takes a lot of in-house talent if you're going to try and do that, or a lot of contract talent that really understands the ask. I mean, it's the classic, the designer's vision and the product team's vision and the consumer's vision are all going to be different. Um, I was curious about this when I first met you, and I don't think we really talked about it. When did you get into speaking and educating folks about cybersecurity outside of the company? Is that something you've always done when you've had opportunities, or is that more recent that you've started doing that? Because I know that's how you
Um,
and I first met.
so one of our executives was on the board at the TIA, and they were trying to they wanted to do a panel on cybersecurity. So she was like, "Oh, hey, how about our VP of IT? He'd be great. We've been working on all this cybersecurity stuff. I'm sure he has a lot to speak about his experience and whatnot." So I spoke on a panel with it was like the CIO of Allen Lund, and a guy from FreightWaves, and one or two other guys. I can't remember. Actually, I think it was a woman and another man. I can't remember who was all there, but we were talking about the future of technology in transportation. And so I did that. And then the TAA, they wanted me to do a cybersecurity one. I think it might have been the next year, maybe 2 years later. I'd been on a
Okay.
couple, different panels, and then there was a cybersecurity one. Might have been the next year, 2020. Actually, 2020, there probably wasn't anything going on, so probably 2021. Um, and then I did it for a couple years, and the last one I was at, um, Caroline from the NMFTA was there in the audience,
Yep.
and right after she came up to me and she said, "I'm with NMFTA. We do this cybersecurity conference every year." She's like, "I have to get you to speak at that. You'd be fantastic." And I was like, "Oh, you want our panel there?" She's like, "No, I want you." She's like, "You were telling stories and stuff, and that's what people want. It doesn't matter how much content you have. You need to have you need to present in a way that will engage people, and
Mm-hmm.
rather than just reading off dictionary notes, and so I was like, oh, and at first I was like, NMFTA, I don't know, let me, you know how sometimes it's like your first reaction is no, no, that's change, that's scary, that's
Yeah. Yeah. Even
and
those of us that say we're good at change, we still have that
yeah,
muscle
yes,
memory, that reflex
oh
that we're
yeah,
like,
oh
it's
yeah,
new. Yeah.
yeah. And so I kind of sat on it for a week or so, and so my wife is she's my big cheerleader. So she's always like, "You can do that," She's kind of like, "And nothing. What are you talking about?" So whatever I'm thinking, no, no, I'm not good enough for that. She's like, "Are you
Yeah.
crazy? You would knock that out of the park." So she kind of
It's helpful to have somebody
was
like that in your court.
yes, yes. In fact, she was the reason that when I was at Home Grocer, the reason that I took the promotion to district manager. So I was working in Portland as an IT manager, and there was a chance to have a promotion and go down and be a district IT manager and build out all of Southern California. And I was just like, oh my gosh, no way, And I got to talk to my wife, but I don't think she'd go for it. She was like, "Are you crazy? Go, go, go!" So,
It's so funny. I consider myself very fortunate to be in a similar spot where, when my transition into NMFTA was out of a role that I'd been in for a long time. I'd been there, I think it was 14 years. I'd been with the
yeah,
same place and working in the same location, hardly ever had to travel.
yeah,
And this opportunity came up, and it was going to be a fair amount of travel and, big change. And I was like, it sounds exciting, but I don't know. I don't see this flying too well. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
brought it up at home, and my wife was like, well, of course you got to do that. Like, what a great opportunity. I was like, oh,
yeah,
okay. Well, what
yeah,
about the public
yeah,
speak? Oh, you'll be fine. You'll figure it out.
yeah, yeah.
So, it's
Well, it's
funny.
funny, and I think of you as a natural. I don't know. Yeah, how could you have any doubts? You're just a natural
Well,
speaker.
I got to tell you a funny story, Steve, because the first time I met you was
Yeah,
what was it, CSCMP, I think,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that was my first public appearance on behalf of NMFTA, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. When we were
And
on that
so
panel.
they were like, I'd had my internal coaching, and they were
Yeah,
gave me my talking points and talked about how just the prep conversation, and I'm envisioning an auditorium, right, with like tons of people, and it's going to be
yeah, yeah,
overwhelming, and I'm going to have to like put my blinders on and just
yeah, yeah,
all the stuff about speaking in front of a large group for someone who doesn't
yeah,
do it regularly.
yeah,
And so I get there, and it wasn't until we went into the room and
yeah,
looked around, I was like, oh my God, there's nobody here. There was like, what, 10 people in that audience. It was like bad
yeah,
scheduling in a bad location. And
yeah, yeah.
I
Way
was
in the
like,
back of the
this is
place.
this is almost worse. Like, I was so uncomfortable. And
Yeah,
then I remember coming in, and I sat down. It was you, me, and Artie Crawford, our director of
yeah,
cybersecurity.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's
he
right.
had just started right after I did. I think we were
Yeah,
within 5 days of each other, and I still didn't really know him at all. But I came
yeah,
in, and I was like, I felt like I was coming from being kind of a bigger fish in a small pond to being the minnow in the ocean here. And I'm sitting down, and I'm like deer in the
yeah,
headlights. But then it was such a great interaction. And it was, so I've been grateful for that introduction to speaking on
Yeah.
behalf of the organization. You were a big part of that, so I appreciate that.
Oh, that's
But
great. Yeah.
it was pretty funny mismatch of expectations going in there, and I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
funny.
worse presenting to a very small group than a very large group. I gotta say,
I think
it's
you're
a
right.
lot
It's
harder.
almost more intimate. Like you feel like you're talking directly to the 5 people or 10 people that are in
Yeah.
the room.
You can't hide with that like vague look
Yeah.
across the audience where it looks like
Yeah.
you're looking at everybody
Yeah. The
again.
glossy-eyed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny. My
Oh,
my
that's
first
funny.
speaking engagement at TIA was actually on the main stage, and I was scared out of my mind. I was like, I walked in and it was packed, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like the first, when you're nervous, it's almost like you're kind of choking up the first few words and you're
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
shaky, and then you kind of hit, all of a sudden it starts to flow, and then it's just you're kind of just going through the motions and
Yep.
everything. And that's kind of how it was. I was like, oh, and I go, oh my God. And then I was thinking, oh my God, they can hear me stuttering and stammering and you know all this stuff. I was kind of focusing on the people next to me, and we had rehearsed, and we had talked, and once we were doing that, and we were kind of then it was just a conversation. We were just like
Yep.
laughing and joking and kind of
Yep.
speaking, and then we had some good questions from the audience, and then it kind of from there. But and if I go a certain amount of time without talking, the same thing kind of happens again, where it's like, but
Yeah.
you do it enough, and it's just a natural thing, I think.
I think it's such an important thing that people, so many people are terrified by it, but I think we're all terrified by it. Even people that do it all the
Yeah,
time have nerves that occur beforehand. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind. Anybody that's like looking at, should I
yeah,
get into it or should I, can I do this or not?
oh yeah, yeah,
Everybody's nervous. Everybody feels like they're, all thumbs and left feet when they get on stage and get in front of people.
yeah,
And, it's just, like you said, you're just talking. You're just having a
yeah. It's kind
conversation,
of like I almost equate it to being really, really nervous about taking a test, and then you get into the test and it's easier than you expected, and then
hmm
you're just like, oh, I got this, and you kind of start to relax, and then when it's over, you walk out and you're like, nailed it.
No,
Wow.
it's been an interesting journey. I think it's good to get out and speak on this stuff. I think people that understand how to translate it into the business are the ones that need to be shouting it from the rooftops, because we
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
cybersecurity stuff in cybersecurity terms all the time.
yeah,
But in order to have it sink in, I think it's got to be coming from people who both get the business and get the technology side of it and have seen how to integrate that
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, nobody wants to go and just hear from vendors all day long. I mean, of course, every vendor's going to say that what they have is the most wonderful thing in the world. And I will say, shout out to the NMFTA. When I went to that conference, um, I really became even more passionate about the NMFTA, just because it wasn't a big vendor sell. It wasn't a, go through 20,000 kiosks of people grabbing you and vultures circling. I mean,
Yeah.
those have a place. I like to go to those when I have an idea of what I need, and then kind of look at the different vendors and get demos. But it was really NMFTA was really, really big on do it yourself, DIY,
hmm
here's what you can do. Oh no, you don't need to do that. This agency has this and this has that. And oh, if you're trying to get started on this, do that. I mean, I filled a notebook. I was in there like, oh yeah, oh I gotta look at this. Oh, I gotta look at this. Oh, I gotta look at
Yep.
this. So even though I was there speaking as an expert in certain areas, I mean, no matter where I go, I always bring back more than I give. I mean, I suck up so much information and bring it back to the crew and say, hey guys, look at this.
Yep.
Let's focus on these two things, because it's free. All it is you have to learn it, and then here are all the resources. That's what I really loved about that, was is very educational, and also a lot of like, here, take the homework home, and you can build your own thing, or figure out how to
hmm
do this,
hmm
or that kind of stuff.
That's 100% what drew me in, because I went through a lot of the same. We didn't do as much in-house development as you guys do, but we went through a modernization and digitization and moving to the cloud and all of that type of stuff. And I didn't really have a roadmap to do it or know where to find all the resources.
Yeah,
It was a matter
yeah,
of like you're hunting and
yeah,
pecking trying to find the resources. And so coming across the ones that NMFTA was putting out at the time before I was here even, I was like, oh my God, this is helpful. Like this finally is something I can use that's not somebody trying to sell me like we talked about earlier, the bolt-on solution that will solve all your problems that never does.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting to jump in here and be like, okay, now I can help do this, because this is the stuff I wanted 10 years ago, for
Yeah.
somebody to be like,
Yeah.
here's some resources, here's a way to do this. And, it's been a really fun opportunity. Not to turn the podcast into a advertising segment, but it's a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For sure.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I hear there's a few cool guys working there too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't met them yet. I don't know where they're hiding, but
Yeah.
there's just these guys that never shut up. They're
Yeah. No, it's
more
funny.
places to talk.
It's funny. When I was telling my wife about being on this podcast, I said, "Yeah, Ben and I could talk for 3 hours anyway. Might as well record it."
Well, and that's just it. It's so funny, and I've had similar conversations where I was like, I come from trucking and I'm in cybersecurity, and if there's any two topics that can either start a never-ending conversation or stop any conversation in its tracks, it's those two topics. Because you start trying to talk trucking or talk cybersecurity to somebody that's not into it, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't understand why you're going on about all this stuff." But you get people in the room that are into this stuff, and the conversation just never stops.
Oh yeah, yeah. Those are my
one
people.
of those things. Yeah, for sure. Well, that was the impetus for this. Is like we've all been on webinars, we've all seen interviews, we've all done interviews.
Yeah.
But it's always topic bound. Like there's something you're speaking about topic X, and I have found that all of the people that I've engaged with, either on panels or at trade shows or whatever, I always want to know more about the person. And so I think that I'm hoping there's more of an appetite, and it's not just me scratching an itch to interview a bunch of people and get to know them more, but I think that there's going to be room for it out there where people are going to be interested in hearing some of the backstories and the why,
Yeah.
I got to do something. I love putting people on the spot here, so I'm gonna ask you a completely off the wall question. So you're gonna be stranded on a deserted island.
Okay.
You'll have food and you'll have water enough to survive.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's 3 things you can bring with you, but you've got to be able to carry them. What 3 items do you bring?
On a deserted island?
Yep. You've got food. You've got water.
You got food and water?
You've got food and water, enough to survive.
Okay.
You're not going to be having steak and caviar.
Yeah. I would bring a wilderness survival handbook.
Nice.
I would bring I'd bring some one of those flint fire making things.
Yep.
Flint and steel. Basically, I was a Boy Scout leader, so
I was going to say, this is starting to smell like a Boy Scouts shopping list here.
Yeah. We had to teach all we had to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'd probably bring that, because being able to start a fire is probably one of the most important things when you're out in the wilderness. And having a guide that a thick guidebook that shows you everything is huge. You can burn the pages once you memorize them too. But
there you go.
Yeah, probably a really good knife probably would be the other thing.
I think those are solid choices. That's a good answer. You're going to be, prepared and ready for the long haul.
Yeah, I actually was the wilderness survival merit badge counselor in the Scouts.
Oh, no kidding. Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
And one of the things that everyone had to do was they had to, they could take. So in Scouts they have what they call the 10 essentials, and it's how to start a fire, all whatever the basic tools, knife, stuff like that, and and they basically were able to bring that and tarp. So you go out for 24 hours with just your 10 essentials and a tarp, and
nice,
and figure out how to do it. And depending on where you were, you could be pretty comfortable. The one of the nights that I did it, we were out in the woods, and it was a very, very mossy area. So we slept pretty good. We just laid down on a thick bed of moss with your
Nice.
tarp, you kind of put the tarp out and throw it over, and then we had one of those emergency, almost looks like aluminum foil bag that you kind of crawl into
Yep.
and kind of sleep
Yep.
under the tarp. But yeah, that's important survival tips, I guess.
I love it. I love it. Wilderness survival, software development, and cybersecurity.
Yep, yep. And sometimes you need
Well,
to combine them.
yeah, yeah, exactly. We're often in survival mode in one way or another,
So
and
yeah, I actually on I actually did the emergency preparedness merit badge too, and I had one of the boys come up with a scenario, and of course, boys being boys, he said zombie apocalypse, and
oh, nice.
he said it as a joke, and I said no, no, let's map this out. Let's map out how we would prepare for a zombie apocalypse, and it actually got the boys thinking, and I ended up kind of tricking them into building out their emergency preparedness kit that they would have at home and stuff because
Nice.
I just kind of put a zombie slant on it, and they were all engaged and they were all excited
Well,
about it.
so see, that's another example of making it fit the context of the environment. It's the same thing
Yeah,
we do in security all the time. You've
yeah,
got to,
yeah, that's
put it
true.
in terms that people understand and people get excited about. So I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Love it.
yeah. Good point. Good point.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Steve, I don't want to keep you all night. I know we could probably keep going for,
Yeah,
as long as it's like goldfish,
yeah,
you just grow to the environment. We can talk to as much time as we have.
yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And
Oh yeah.
it's always good
Anytime.
chatting with you.